clowns to the left of me and cosplayers to the right, and here I am stuck in the middle with you, Brian. Boy, that one. What you did there was you crossed over that bridge like you were skipping as it was collapsing underneath you, sort of like a flat rock skipping over the lake. Peep, 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 and got by with it. You were way off there, pal. Way off. It was way off from the start there when you hit the bomb tone instead of the beep tone, and then
no, I messed
holy
up.
mackerel.
I messed up a few times today. See, a lot of it's just because of the angle I was at. I wasn't in a comfortable position. I needed to be in a better position.
Yeah.
My arm was at a weird, crooked angle.
Why are you playing the organ from underneath your desk? What are you doing over there?
The apparatus is on the left. So I'm facing forward. Here's the two computers in front of me and my microphone. And then to the left is this. So
wait a minute. You got two computers and a microphone?
That's right.
Well, you're where it's at, baby.
Look at who knows Beck. How about that? That's impressive.
Hey.
How do you know that song? I'm blown away that you know that song. How do you know that song?
Because you couldn't get away from the goddamn thing about 30 years ago. It was in Grand. That's the only part of it I could understand. And it was repeated over and over and over again. And every goddamn elevator that you might be in and 19, whatever the fuck year that was, that golden year.
That was kind of your era of, that's as close as you ever got to understanding or being a part of alternative music. With everything you were doing.
There was no alternative.
Well, there was no alternative. I guess that's the way to look at it.
Why did they call it alternative music when it was everywhere and you couldn't get away from it? There was no alternative.
You know, I just saw WWE did an interview with the Headbangers. I guess they must have signed a Legends deal or something. And they did an interview and they were talking about how they got the gimmick in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And they didn't explain it, so it just sounded funny without any explanation. Like, yeah, Jim Cornette was at a Marilyn Manson concert and he saw this. Oh, no, they didn't even say that. They said Danzig, I think. Whatever it was, they mentioned that you were there, but they didn't say like, well, because he was working with Rick Rubin. It just sounded like Jim Cornette was hanging out one night at the concerts.
Yeah. You know, he was a big fucking head-banging groupie and fellow back then. I wasn't even there. No, I was there actually, but it wasn't even because I was working with Rick Rubin because it was in Knoxville. My friend Cat Collins, who was working with Rick Rubin, had invited me just because he was going to be there. And I can't even remember the name of it. It was a place I'd never been to in Knoxville. And I lived and ran the town for 4 years. I'd never been there before or since. But the concert was Glenn Danzig, who was a big wrestling fan and, you know, independently of Rubin as well. We just all kind of congregated with very odd bedfellows with being wrestling fans. But so Kat said, come down and I introduce you to Glenn Danzig and blah, blah, blah. And it was the opening act that nobody had ever fucking heard of. Because I'd ask Kat, I said, can I like either sit backstage with you or, you know, if I got to piss, can I, come on the bus or whatever? Because I didn't want to go out in the fucking public area when I saw the fan base coming in. I thought our people they were salt of the earth people. They were a bit off, but they were still normal. But I didn't know where these citizens that came to the concert, where they habitated in Knoxville during the day, because you never saw them out on the street or anywhere else. But nevertheless, so I'm back behind the deal over by the amplifier or whatever, and the opening act comes on, and it's Marilyn Manson. And he's wearing a goddamn skirt, and he's got the combat boots, and he screams at one point at the count of 3, I want you all to spit on me. And I'm not in the line of fire, but I'm ducking anyway, right? And they do. And I'm like, what the fuck? There's a gimmick to be had here somehow. And that's when Glenn and Chaz were, you remember seeing them as the Spiders, right?
They worked for Dennis as the Spiders, but also, especially Glenn Ruth, he was a regular enhancement guy on WWF TV for a long time because of all the tapings in the Northeast.
Well, then they were from New Jersey. And
yeah, WWF.
Yeah, I talked to them, a number of times because they were trying to go somewhere, and I think they may have ended up going to work for Bert Prentice in. I don't know if this was before they came to work for me, or I think it was before because I think they were still the Spiders. But remember when Bert Prentice closed a territory down in like Missouri somewhere and didn't tell the boys? And they just they found out when they showed up for the fucking towns and there was no towns. But nevertheless, I'd been wanting to bring them in, but I didn't want Tennessee, and especially outlaw wrestling in Tennessee, had been filled with masked tag teams as job guys or as, whatever. Going back to the days in the 60s when Goulas was running 4 towns a night, and then some of the boys would say he'd send the real fucking interns or infernos to the town that had the best advance, but they'd be booked 2 or 3 different places. I don't fucking know. But nevertheless, I said, here's a gimmick. I thought of it. I said, here's a gimmick for you. I said, but you got to wear dresses. And they're like, what? And, and then they took to it. But it was just started out. I was like, just look at these weird young people, these weird young hipsters and their chains and their goddamn noses and everything. We can get something out of this. And that became the headbang. And then they took it and ran with it.
So what do you think when you see your gimmick on WWE? Like, do you feel like, hey, that's my gimmick, or are you just happy that?
No, I to get them to use the Headbangers gimmick when they came in '96, I signed paperwork for them because they wouldn't. It was the same thing as D'Lo Brown. They wouldn't use those names and or gimmicks, whatever you want to call them, if they were the boys and the boys had come up with them because they wanted to own everything. But because I was working there at the time and I could testify that no, I named him D'Lo Brown and I named him the Headbangers, Thrasher and Mosh, and I'm with the office here. I was getting them a job, right? Instead of having them change all their shit. What the fuck then are you gonna? Why would you give somebody a job and then change all their shit? The reason why you gave them a job, right? So, nevertheless, so that's how they were able to do that.
Well, there it is. So many people think of Smoky Mountain Wrestling and they think of, the Allman Brothers' Jessica or something, or Fire on the Mountain, the song.
Yes.
But between hip hop and rap in '94 with the Gangstas, and then the next year with the Headbangers, you were kind of, in your own little way, as on top of alternative music as Paul Heyman was.
It just had to fit. I didn't have a lot of guys. Would Bullet Bob have come out to Public Enemy? Right? I didn't. That's the thing. To me, music, and remember we've joked about big Russ McCullough. When the theme song that he actually picked was titled Dead and Bloated. And it was so ironic. It was a metaphor for his entire career and wrestling style. But it's not what the guys like and think that's a cool song. It's what song gives the vibe and the gets the people in the mood, gets the reaction. Born in the USA was the furthest thing from a patriotic song. If you listen to it was patriotic in its own way, but it wasn't like rah-rah if you listen to the words. But at the same time, nobody listened to the words and they just, born in the USA. So for the baby face, whatever, right? But the entrance music has to reflect or enhance or create the vibe of who this guy is supposed to fucking be if he was really the person we're portraying him as, not what's his favorite song. And that's what you would go through with some of the guys when you were trying, especially at OVW, and some of them were knocked it out of the park, home runs, the fucking It's Raining Men for the Heartbreakers. That was theirs. They came up with it and it was fucking perfect because I didn't have music I couldn't get it. I said, I'm going to give you fucking Pat Benatar's Heartbreaker if you don't give me something, right? And they thought I was serious and oh shit. So they found something and it was fucking perfect. But other times it depends on what the fucking guy's appearance, I hate to say the word character, but what their gimmick is as to what the fucking music should be, not just what they like or what's necessarily fashionable. So in OVW, all the shit was young people's music, except in the case of it was somebody's gimmick not to be, right? But in Smoky Mountain, that shit was actually newer than goddamn Taylor Swift's first hit would be right now. So it just people are looking back and going, that's old music. Well, not really, because that's old footage.
Yeah, the stud stable coming out the Hard to Handle wasn't exactly an old song. I mean, it was an old song, but that recording wasn't an old recording by that point.
No, because it was the Crows and it was on the radio. And they were produced by Rick Rubin. And they were doing, pardon me if I'm giving Otis Redding credit, but it was Redding, right? It was a cover.
It's definitely a cover, because I know I've heard other versions. I don't know if it's an Otis Redding song or not.
Well, maybe you could Google that by the time that I fucking blurt this out, because it was the perfect thing for Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden. These two goddamn, they're 6'6" apiece or whatever. And many people know that Robert Fuller had the biggest dick in captivity. And those shit-eating grins they've got, and they are country as fuck, just hillbilly fuck you motherfuckers, and with that personality. And here comes the fucking Crows doing a fucking remake of a 60s song. It was perfect. It gave you the fucking vibe, right?
Yeah, it is Otis Redding, and the version I knew was the Grateful Dead version, because that was something they...
Oh, good Lord. I have never heard that, and I can't imagine what it would sound like.
Pigpen sang lead on that one. It was good.
There needs to be somebody involved in that from down south to make it work. And I don't know where instead of South San Francisco.
Well, let me ask you about
Baby, here I am, a man on your scene.
Let me ask you about...
But basically, it was about Robert Fuller's giant cock is what that entrance music was about, and it fucking worked.
I never even put two and two together. That's why that was the theme song. That's crazy to know.
That was the idea I had. They didn't give it like... They didn't give a shit. They never had music half the time they were in the business, right? It was like... When I asked Jimmy Golden, what do you want to use for your finish? Well, I throw a pretty good drop kick. And then he knocked the fucking guy out with it. I said, okay, that's your finish.
Well, before we close up this look at the music of Smoky Mountain.
And Robert Fuller's dick.
Let me ask you about the one time that I know, at least now, and I'm sure it was then too, the wrestlers didn't like your choice of music. At least one of the two I know has been very public about it. Chris Jericho. He didn't like the song you picked for the Thrill Seekers. What was that discussion like? Did you have that song in your mind before you...
There was no discussion. I said, here's your music.
Like, where did that song, how did that come to you? What made you decide on that song?
I'm trying to think, because we did... See, here's the thing. With them, I did videos. I was taking off on, as Gomer Pyle would say, I was taking off on the Fabulous Ones videos from... 9 years previously or whatever the fuck. I was trying to get some girls to the matches. Little did I know I was going to get no cooperation from the faux Fabulous Ones. So I'm trying to remember what the entrance music was and what some of the music videos we did. What was
the song Rock America.
That's right. Okay. Simple. It was some goddamn heavy metal song or hair metal song by some goddamn hair metal band that was on the radio within the previous 3 or 4 years, that here's these Canadian guys, young rock and roll types that are going to come down here to America and rock America. How deep do we have to go with this?
Is Lance Storm as far from a rock and roll type as you could think of now that you know the guy?
Now that I know him, I would have brought him in for Sandy Scott's job if I'd have known of his personality. But I was just looking at his fucking beefy body.
But is that a situation where you would have been, like, if Jericho and Storm come up to you and said, you know, we're okay with it if you want to do it, would you please listen to this and consider this? Would you have been open to, or were you pretty much...
Like, no, that's the thing is, see, Jericho now with hindsight, didn't realize he was ever going to get to be a faux rock star like he was a faux fabulous one, right? He didn't know he was going to have the pull to do these things. So I don't recall a conversation where they ever came up and said, "We hate our music. Will you listen to this and we can change our music?" And if it happened, no, it didn't happen. So I can pretty much say that. I think they were embarrassed about the music videos also. I don't know, on Jericho's part, it may have been because of his musical choices were different than ours, but I think I just took it as both of them were embarrassed to be on goddamn camera, because Lance was, because they'd never been on camera before. And here we've got him out at Gatlinburg, fucking doing things in the Smoky Mountains and interacting with the fans and supposed to be personable. And Lance was as social as a goddamn case crotch rot. So I didn't, a point is, if they'd have given me something that was good under the parameters that I just discussed, I would have listened to it and or considered it. But they might have given me whatever fucking Chris listens to that he screeches along with on those videos of him shot by his phone where he's just screaming in the night and say, "See, I can sing." And then, sounds like he's turned into a werewolf.
That is still one of the funniest things ever. Where I think it was when he was feuding with Sebastian Bach. And
yes,
whether he could sing or not was called the question. And he put up the video. It was like him in his home office, like, "Watch this." And he starts screeching and you almost think he's joking and you realize, oh my God, he's serious and he can't sing.
You get about a minute in and you think, it's not a rib here. He is, no, this is the way it's supposed to be, he thinks. And what the fuck? Again, Sebastian Bach never said that Jericho couldn't wrestle. So why the fuck is Jericho trying to say I could out-sing Sebastian Bach? But that's a story for another day.
Can you imagine that you're Sebastian Bach and you get this video like, "Hey, Sebastian, look at this." Ah!
Yeah. You tell him, Antonio.
Oh, no, it's not stopping again. Oh, man. Oh, there we go. Tiger.
But that's the story on the song. So that's basically what that was. But he hated his music so bad he broke his own arm on purpose to get out of it. He could have just given me another DVD, or a CD. Who did the Canadians listen to in 1994? Was it Rush?
I don't know if it was Rush then. Maybe Sloan.
They're very Canadian, aren't they?
It could have been. Maybe the Zit Remedy. I'm not exactly sure, but Jim, you may hear some mild noise in the background. They're doing some trimming.
Christ.
They're doing some trimming. It shouldn't be the usual
They're doing chaos. Some trimming. Some people are being hoisted on their own petards.
Well, when I was going to say, this is a Noki thing. God damn it. Tiger, almost. Jim, some people have a song and they want to sing it. Some people have a book and they want you to read it. And let's talk about Cornette's Collectibles and, of course, your brand new book.
Well, I'll tell you, and some people don't have a lot of books left and they want you to wait patiently. We've talked about the incredible response, and I appreciate it and thanked everybody on the last program we did. I'll thank you, listeners of Brian's show, here for the tremendous response we're on now. By the time the folks hear this, more or less the last 500 copies of the print run, and nobody's even seen it yet. I just, over the last couple of days, says that's what I've been doing. I've been watching wrestling and signing books, and I'm all out of bubble gum and fucking mental capacity as well. By the time the folks hear this, the first 400 and something orders will have been turned over to Hotchkiss to get labels on and get out to the people. And we're still working on the first day on sale. The people that ordered on October 11th, and there's many of you out there, you jumped in at first, you get priority. We're going to muddle through the first day on sale orders in hopefully the next 10 to 14 days. And then start on October 12th. And you see where this is going, folks, but past now the point of, is this book going to be reprinted? If you want it before Christmas, I urge you to act quickly, because I foresee that my life is going to be a revolving door of signing books and doing podcasts for the next 8 weeks or so. But we're going to do this. And the feather bottoms are behind me and all the other wonderful stuff that's on sale. By the way, we have sold out of Wrestling at the Garden books by Scott Teal again. That makes 300 we've gone through, and we're getting with Scott to see if we can get any more and add those because there's been such tremendous interest. But all the action figures are still available while they last and at sale prices and so much more at jimcornette.com. But the book, Heroes and Friends, the first recipients will start getting that book by the beginning of the week of whatever the fuck Monday is on the 27th or 28th. You're going to start seeing it then. And then we encourage you, the lucky ones, tweet out your photos or unwrapping videos or whatever the kids do when they get boxes in the mail these days. And tell us what you think of it, because apparently you trust me sight unseen, and I appreciate that. But order quickly before Christmas. Or Hanukkah, for that matter.
That's right. At CornettesCollectibles.com. And those
which comes first, Christmas or Hanukkah? Hanukkah's first, right?
Not always, but I believe this year it is.
Well, it's soon. What comes before that? Is there any other holiday that comes before that? Well, besides, I mean, in the holiday, the Christmas area, any other people's holiday, order well before your first holiday, whatever part of the world you're in, and order well before Festivus.
That's right. There's all sorts of noise. Now Swami's going, but Jim Cornette.
Swami's going. Well, God, have you had his kidneys checked? Just right on the rug?
CornettesCollectibles.com. I literally have a conversation with the guy. I tell him when I'm going to record. He goes, I'll have them do something else. And now,
yeah, they did. They went to lunch and came back.